Have you ever experienced a setback so devastating that it felt like you were literally thrown into a dark pit? Maybe you were betrayed by the people you trusted most, falsely accused, or forced to watch as your life's work was stripped away in an instant. When you hit rock bottom, it is easy to believe that your story is over. But what if that pit isn't a grave? What if your deepest, darkest moments are actually the exact training ground required for your ultimate triumph? Welcome back to Biblical Bios, where we uncover the deeply motivational stories of the everyday people who completely changed history. Today, we are diving into the ultimate story of resilience, Joseph's journey. Joseph's life was a roller coaster of massive dreams, brutal betrayals, false imprisonment, and staggering comebacks. He went from being a discarded slave to the second most powerful man on earth. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why the worst things that happen to you might just be the exact preparation you need to step into your ultimate purpose. Every great comeback story starts with a devastating fall, and Joseph's fall was brutal. Joseph was the favorite son of his father, Jacob. He was given a beautiful, multicolored coat as a symbol of that favor. But Joseph also had massive dreams, prophetic visions where his family would one day bow down to him. And being young and naive, he shared those dreams with his older brothers. His brothers didn't celebrate his vision, they despised it. Their jealousy became so toxic that they conspired to murder him. Instead of killing him, they stripped him of his beautiful coat, threw him into a deep, dry pit, and eventually sold him into slavery to a passing caravan. In a single day, Joseph lost his family, his identity, his freedom, and his future. Here is a powerful motivational truth. Sometimes the people closest to you will be the most triggered by your potential. When you start dreaming big, trying to break generational curses, or building a new life, not everyone will clap for you. Some will try to throw you in a pit. But as Joseph's story proves, your enemies might be able to strip you of your coat, but they can never strip you of your calling. The pit wasn't the end of his dream. It was simply the first harsh classroom. Joseph is dragged to Egypt and sold to a man named Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Most people would have completely given up here. They would have become bitter, angry, and refused to work. But Joseph did the exact opposite. He put his head down and became so excellent at his job that Potiphar eventually put him in charge of his entire household. Joseph was rebuilding his life. But just when things were looking up, disaster struck again. Potiphar's wife tried repeatedly to seduce Joseph. When Joseph flatly refused because of his unwavering integrity, she retaliated. She falsely accused him of assault. Potiphar believed his wife, and Joseph was stripped of his position and thrown into a royal dungeon. Think about how incredibly unfair this is. Joseph did the absolute right thing, and his reward was a prison cell. In your own life, you will face seasons where you do everything right, you work hard, you maintain your integrity, you treat people well, and you still lose. You get passed over for the promotion, the business goes under, or your reputation is unfairly attacked. It is deeply frustrating. But Joseph's response teaches us an invaluable lesson. Your character is forged in the dark. Even in the dungeon, Joseph refused to let his circumstances dictate his attitude. The dungeon is where dreams are supposed to die. But Joseph simply started over again. He was so diligent and trustworthy that the prison warden eventually put him in charge of the other prisoners. During this time, two high-ranking officials, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker, were thrown into the prison. They both had disturbing dreams, and Joseph, using his God-given gift, interpreted them perfectly. He told the cupbearer that he would be restored to his position in 3 days. Joseph made just one simple request. When everything goes well with you, remember me and get me out of this prison. The cupbearer is restored, just as Joseph said, but then the cupbearer completely forgot about him for 2 whole years. Can you imagine the psychological torture of those 2 years? Every time he heard footsteps, Joseph probably thought, "This is it. They're coming to release me." But day after day, nothing happened. This is the hardest phase of any underdog journey, the waiting season. You have put in the work, you have helped others succeed, but you feel completely invisible and forgotten. But here's the secret: those 2 years were not wasted time. They were incubation. If Joseph had been released early, he would have just been a free man in Egypt. By waiting, he was perfectly positioned for the exact moment the entire nation would need him. Don't stop using your gifts just because you aren't being recognized yet. Suddenly, the Pharaoh of Egypt has 2 terrifying dreams that none of his brilliant magicians or wise men can figure out. That is when the cupbearer finally remembers Joseph. In a matter of hours, Joseph is pulled from the dungeon, shaved, dressed in clean clothes, and brought before the most powerful man on the planet. Joseph not only interprets Pharaoh's dream, predicting 7 years of massive abundance, followed by 7 years of devastating global famine, but he immediately pitches a brilliant, actionable management plan to save the country. Pharaoh is so blown away by Joseph's wisdom that he takes his own signet ring, puts it on Joseph's finger, and makes him second in command over all of Egypt. In a single day, the slave and prisoner becomes the prime minister. People love to call this an overnight success, but it wasn't. It was a 3-year grind. How did Joseph know how to manage the wealth of an entire nation? Because he learned how to manage Potiphar's house? How did he know how to handle massive logistics in a crisis? Because he organized a state prison. The pit and the prison were not punishments. They were his university. Every single agonizing setback was teaching him the exact administrative, leadership, and emotional skills he needed to rule Egypt. Your current struggle is doing the exact same thing for you. The famine hits, just as Joseph predicted, and it is so severe that it forces a group of men from Canaan to travel to Egypt begging to buy food. Those men were Joseph's brothers, the same brothers who threw him in the pit over 20 years ago. They bow down before the prime minister of Egypt, not realizing he is the brother they sold into slavery. Joseph's childhood dream had finally come true. He had the power to execute them on the spot. He had every right to take revenge. But instead, Joseph provides one of the most powerful mindset shifts in human history. He looks at his terrified brothers and says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." True ultimate triumph isn't about crushing your haters. It's about recognizing your purpose. Joseph realized that if he hadn't been thrown in the pit, he never would have been a slave. If he wasn't a slave, he never would have been falsely accused. If he wasn't in prison, he never would have met the cupbearer. And if he never met the cupbearer, he never would have saved millions of people, including his own family, from starvation. Whatever pit you are in right now, know this: it is building a resilience in you that cannot be bought. The pain you are experiencing is preparing you for a stage you cannot even comprehend yet. Keep your integrity, keep working in the dark, and trust that your story is far from over. If Joseph's incredible journey inspired you to keep pushing through your own waiting seasons, please hit that like button and subscribe to Biblical Bios. I want to hear from you. What is a pit or a massive setback in your life that you eventually realized was actually preparing you for something greater? Share your story in the comments below. Also, if you need a daily boost of motivation to overcome the unfair obstacles in your life, make sure to check the description for our Underdog devotional and study guide. It's packed with actionable mindset lessons based on these powerful stories. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you might be in the dark right now, but you are not buried, you are planted. Keep growing, and I'll see you in the next video where we dive into Esther's courage and how one ordinary girl found her voice when absolutely everything was on the line.